I'm Quinn,
And I'm Drew.
and this is the year we got better.
Welcome back to our podcast. For those who missed the first episode, Quinn and I are on a 52-week journey to invest in our holistic wellness, and we're taking you along with us.
Last week, we described the 8 dimensions of wellness and what they each mean. And we highly suggest checking out that episode if you haven't yet. It's just episode 1. But today we wanted to take a deeper dive into why are we doing this?
It's a great question. Why are we doing this?
Well, Drew, I want to start with you. And I actually kind of want to go back in time for a little bit and focus on your journey of health and wellness throughout your life. So what has that been like, over the last 33
Oh,
years?
yes. We had to go there. That's how we had to start it out. Gosh, I think anytime we talk about the trajectory of someone's life and their relationship with wellness, it sometimes brings up it's fraught with emotion, positives, negatives, all sorts of things. I think if we go all the way back to my childhood,
Let's dive
let's
in,
dive
Drew.
right in.
Go for it. Tell us about your childhood relationship with wellness.
No, I think one of the things looking back that I realized is that I was very anxious as a child. But at the time, I thought that was super normal. And
That's just how everybody
yes,
felt. Yeah.
unfortunately, and it was not normal, right? And I think that affected my relationship with mental well-being and mental health in a way that I didn't really understand until I was an adult.
That makes a lot of sense. How would you have the context to understand that as a child? Especially, if you grow up in a family like so many of us did, where mental health wasn't really
Yeah.
talked about in the, late 90s, early 2000s. I think that was just a really different time.
It was a very different time, and I'm grateful that I have landed in the place that I have. But looking back on it, it wasn't until I was out of college that I really started to learn the vocabulary to speak about mental health
Right.
and the choices that I had made in my life and the approach that I had, and all of the dimensions were affected by my anxiety. So that was kind of a foundational element of my overall well-being while
Yeah.
growing up. Um, I think also I've had a seesawing relationship, I guess you could say, with physical wellness throughout my life. There have been periods where I've been super devoted to my physical well-being and focused really strictly on different dieting regimens or workout regimens
Right.
that had temporary positive effects. I would say very positive effects
Yeah.
for my overall state and well-being.
We've even done some of those things together.
We have. The unfortunate part is that it often feels like those are not sustainable or were not sustainable in the past.
We'll do them for a couple months and then you're like, ugh, I'm bored of this, or I'm tired of this, or this is not really a good balance with the rest of my life. So many different reasons.
Yeah. And I could go through all the 8 dimensions. I won't bore you with every single one, but
You never bore us.
no, well, thank you so much. Um, but yeah, I think my relationship with wellness, I have always wanted to pursue great things in my life. And the methods that I have pursued to try and do that have had varying rates of success, is maybe how I would phrase it.
When do you think you felt closest to being your best self?
I like the answer that I'm going to give, but it actually has a little bit of a
The answer that I'm about to give.
no. But what I'm going to preface this with is that there's a twinge of it hurts a little bit for me to admit when this was, because it was about a decade ago.
Yeah. So does that put you in college, right after college?
This was actually in college, so more than a decade. Ugh. At this
Don't say it like that.
Yes.
It sounds worse.
more than a decade ago. Specifically, I think my junior year, going into my senior year of college, I was going through. I think this was the start of me unpacking some of my anxiety and starting to learn some of the vocabulary around mental health. This was the first time I'd put conscious, intentional effort into my physical well-being.
Okay.
I was not an exerciser or someone who went to the gym, and I don't know if this is common for other people, but in my friend group, this was kind of common where you start going to the gym and then you get addicted to the gym and you're
Yeah.
like, now this is the thing that I do.
Right. It almost becomes your personality.
Yes.
You're like, I go to the gym so much. This is what I do. This is
Yes. And it became my hobby. And I found that a lot of the other aspects of my life fell into place when I was in this period.
Okay.
I was being really intentional with what I was doing.
I'm curious about 2 things. I'm curious, first of all, what about that particular time felt so good? And I'm also curious, and I don't mean this to at you. I mean this in a nice way, but what about that was not sustainable? Because clearly something about that, right? It's 10 years or 12 years later, and you're not still doing that.
Yeah.
Again, not to at you, not throwing shade. Like
It's
Drew's not rolling up to the gym every day,
No,
guys.
I'm not. I'm definitely not, and we can speak to why I don't feel great about that aspect of my wellness right now, but the easy answer to that question is that I was in college.
Right.
Completely fell apart when I entered the workforce and my schedule changed. I am not I still am not, but I was not a morning person at that time.
Never a morning person.
Never a morning person,
Never gonna be a morning person. Let's just own it.
and
You're a night person, and I love that about
I am, and I think, justice for night people
you.
is
It's so true. That's so true. We should do a whole episode on that.
we should. The society is built around early morning risers, but that's a
Anyway.
full other discussion.
So Drew enters the work.
I entered the workforce and it was the workout was the first thing to go.
Right.
I was exhausted from having to work in the
Crazy job. Also.
I had a crazy job. I had a crazy commute. It sucked up so much of my personal time. And at the end of the day, all I wanted to do is sit down and just have an hour to myself to
Yeah.
just veg out and not do anything.
Yeah, and I'm being so serious when I say crazy commute because Drew would drive 2 hours each way to the
did.
office. His first job out of college.
I did. That was a whole other choice that again, not the wisest thing that I've ever done.
But it's like when you're 22 and you're just graduating from college, you're like, oh, I have a job, any job. That sounds awesome. Like, I want to be employed more than
Yes.
anything else. And also, you're kind of at the bottom of the workforce totem pole.
Mhm.
And I think it's kind of a great example, Drew, of how like your occupational cup was not getting filled. And that was really impacting a lot of other areas of your life.
So I agree with that. And I also think that like at that point, the occupational cup was the only thing that I was really focused on.
And yet it wasn't like fulfilling or rewarding.
There were parts of it that were fulfilling or rewarding, but I think I was neglecting the other aspects of my wellness unintentionally,
Right.
but so severely neglecting them that looking back on it, I'm like, of course that makes sense. And
of course I felt like shit. Of course I felt so tired. Yeah.
the fact that I was unintentionally neglecting those dimensions of my wellness really came to a head about 2 years into my professional career.
Tell us about that. I'm curious when this kind of transition had been for you.
It was around probably 2 or 3 years into my professional career, and I was burnt out already
And at 24.
at 24.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's common or not, but it was
You can't be the only one. Like, I really believe, I'm sorry, this is like a little bit of a tangent,
Mm.
but I really do believe that we can feel so isolated in these
Mhm.
experiences. Like, oh, I'm only 24 and I'm feeling, burnt out from my job. Like, you are not the only one going through
Right.
that. And I think the more we talk about those things rather than feeling ashamed of them or like, I shouldn't be feeling this way, I think the more you talk about them, the more you find a community about that, right?
Yeah.
So you're 24, you're burned out. What's
Yeah.
next?
I had my first panic attack, at least that I can really speak to or identify as my first panic attack. And it was really just a wake up call for me of being like, something is not right here. I didn't know at the time exactly what was going on, but I realized that the situation that I had put myself into was not working or not serving me. That really set in motion a series of events of me figuring out what do I need to do to mend myself. Like clearly I have inflicted some type of damage through the environment that I put myself into or the choices that I'm making.
Or also, like your upbringing in life up to that point. I think there's so many factors. And I just want to challenge that of
Mhm.
like, you created this environment that was hurting yourself. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of factors. And I don't want to see you put all that blame on yourself either.
I think that's true. I mean, obviously there's like a nature and a nurture component
Right.
of this, but I think in the context of this specific discussion point, the environmental factors that I was putting onto myself were
Right.
were making it worse. If I had a predisposition to anxiety or a predisposition to depression, I was not
Right.
setting myself up for success.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So this is kind of 10 years ago ish,
Yeah.
9, 10 years ago. And you are making strides now. You're kind of wanting to change. But it's still, even before that,
Yeah.
that was the last time you felt like really good about yourself, like the best that you felt about yourself. So I want to now jump forward to kind of right before we started this project.
Yeah.
Right. So over the last few months, like what does your health and wellness journey look like now?
Mhm.
What was working? What wasn't working?
The social dimension was really working well for me, but many of the other aspects had fallen to the wayside. Last year, we were planning a wedding,
Yeah.
and
That took a lot.
it took a lot of energy, and we tried really hard to balance working out and eating well and fueling our bodies and focusing on our mental health and all of these things. But, when your attention becomes divided, it's hard to be intentional with what you're doing with your time.
That is so true.
So it forced me to look in the mirror and ask the question, how do I feel about each of these things? And when I wrote it down, this was a journaling exercise, the first one that I had done.
Yeah.
I really didn't like the answer that I had rated or how I had rated myself for each of them. And unfortunately, it put me in a position where I'm like, I don't really love the person who I am right now.
It's really hard, I think, to look in the mirror and say that. And I think it says a lot about you, Drew, and your, ability to be self-reflective that you can say, I'm not loving the person I am right now, but also that you have the growth mindset, so to speak, right? To say, but I'm not stuck like this.
Yes.
I can continue to invest in getting better and that's what I'm going to do.
One of the things I was probably the most critical about was my inability to move forward with some of my
Hmm.
longer term or larger goals in life.
Right. I remember you talking about
Yeah. So looking at that on paper and evaluating projects that I had started and never finished or brought into the real world, it was it it
that.
got
That's
it got real,
yeah.
right? It was not fun to look at that list and really if I was looking at someone else, it would be very objective for me to be like that person didn't meet their goal. Looking at it for myself, it's like I've made excuses along the way.
Right. It's you find like character flaws
Mm.
when you're looking at yourself. But with someone else, I think you can say, oh, that person didn't meet this goal because they were planning a wedding or
Right.
because this, that, and the other thing. I think you can it's hard to be like empathetic for yourself sometimes. I think that's something that, we both can work on and honestly probably everyone can work
Yes, I agree with that. So to kind of put a period at the end of this very long sentence,
on.
um, I had a day of feeling very sorry about for myself.
You know what? You deserve it. Everyone deserves to feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's important to just acknowledge that emotion first of all, like sit in it, not try and push it away.
Yeah.
Be like, I don't like how I feel right now. But the next day, I woke up and was like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to be really intentional with the the overall goal of where I'm trying to get and putting in the energy and the time into something. And, transparently, one of the things that I was most frustrated about was not finishing projects, right?
Right.
I purchased a lot of the equipment for this podcast 2 years
Years ago.
ago with the intention of doing multiple different projects, none of which ever came to fruition for a variety of different reasons. Acknowledging that I wasn't where I wanted to be and seeing this as an opportunity for me to put my time and energy into it became motivating.
Mm.
And we're only 2 weeks into it at this point, but I do feel like I'm happy that we've made this choice.
I'm happy that we made this choice too. And I'm happy to hear that, Drew. Like it's also, it's hard as your partner also to see you and hear you not, feeling good about yourself, right? I want to reach out and help,
Mm.
right? But I think also so much of that comes from the inside and it's something that like, yes, we're doing this project together, but I think this is also a really personal project
It is.
where we're both forced to come to terms kind of with what we see in the mirror, how we want that to change, and then that final crucial step of what actionable things are we going to do
Yeah.
to make that change.
I also think it's important to just caveat. I'll speak for myself. I know you've said similar things in the past. Our lives are not horrible,
No, no,
right?
our lives are actually great.
Yes. And I think there's a little bit of guilt sometimes when you feel like you're not in a great place and you compare yourselves to others. Compare yourself to others. And then you're like, well, other people are suffering more than me. Other people are farther behind than me in some areas. I should feel good about where I am. It now I'm like being critical of myself for even feeling bad about this. I shouldn't feel bad about this because I should be grateful for where I am.
That's really a farce, I think. And you know this as much as I
Yeah.
do. That comparison game will get you on either side of the spectrum, right? You compare yourself to people who are doing better, quote unquote, whatever that means than you, right? The kind of keeping up with the
Yeah.
Joneses effect. And like that's super detrimental too.
Yes.
But on the flip side is what you're talking about, Drew, which is comparing yourself to people who are doing quote unquote worse, right? Like we have a safe, comfortable home. There are many people who are unhoused, right? We can afford groceries. There are many people who struggle with that, right? So you're also thinking, well, why am I unhappy? How can I be unhappy when I have all these things that other
Yeah.
people want? And I think I think you can acknowledge those feelings, but I think ultimately if you want to improve yourself, you have to put to the wayside and say, "Look, I'm going to focus on me, myself and I." And I'm not going to let that comparison game get in my head.
All right, Quinn, so I'm going to turn this around on you. What has your relationship with wellness been like throughout different stages of your life?
It is so hard to answer that question because all of a sudden it's like my life is so long. There's so many
Exactly.
things to say. But to keep it short and sweet, my relationship with wellness throughout my life, I think, has mainly centered around physical. And I think a splash of mental health, probably only in the last like 5 to 10 years.
Mhm.
Um, but growing up, I definitely, lived in a house where like I was fully raised on Kraft mac and cheese and like microwave chicken nuggets. And no shame in that. Like my parents were doing their best. Um, but definitely kind of this knowledge about like nutrition and healthy eating.
Fueling your body.
Yes, fueling your body. That was not a staple of my childhood. Um, I will say though that both of my parents were more focused on eating healthy. And I would often see like my mom dieting, like on this diet or that diet or the other. And I think that really influenced as well my relationship with food. Because especially as I became a teenager and I'm not a slender person. I'm a curvy girl. And at 27, I own that, right? Like I am always working on being more at peace with my body, but overall, I'm comfortable with the way that I look.
Mhm.
Um, at 16, I did not feel that way at all. I felt like I will do, whatever it takes to be skinny. And that meant a lot of different things, right? That meant like obsessively running on the treadmill like at night. That meant going on the Atkins diet, which I was like totally not even doing right for like 2 weeks before prom, only to down an entire bag of Cheetos the night before because I was so hungry. So I think that that was kind of like the foundation, right? From there, I went on to college and I am not a super athletic person. At least I'm not a super hand-eye coordinated person.
I
So,
don't think that's the only way to judge athleticism.
well, that's kind of what I'm saying is like throughout my life, I was kind of awful at sports. For example, I was just factually the worst player on my childhood lacrosse team for years. And like my parents were just like, "Yay, go Quinn, you're doing great." No, someone needed to stop me. But anyway, so I went to college and I pretty quickly found a new kind of outlet for my not hand-eye coordinated athleticism, and that was rowing. So I joined the William and Mary rowing team, and that was a transformative experience for me. First of all, I was rowing with a bunch of other women who looked like me,
Mhm.
who were more muscular and more, you don't need to be skinny to row. You need some
Yeah,
manpower, woman
exactly.
power, if you will. Um, but I also was exercising so much that like not fueling my body was not an option.
Mhm.
And I was able, to find kind of more of a balance with eating and working out. I also got into running and I felt really, really good about my body.
I want to pause there for a second. You were putting so much energy into physical. How were the other dimensions of wellness affected during that period of your life?
What was interesting about being on a team sport, like a sports team, um, was that my social dimension was also very fulfilled by that. I
Yeah.
had teammates that I spent a lot of time with and was really close to. Um, you
And
know,
many of whom you're still very close with.
yes, I am. I'm still close to a ton of my William and Mary rowing friends. One of my rowing teammates was literally a bridesmaid in our wedding last year.
Yeah.
And many of them, we still see on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
Shout out, Caroline.
Shout out so many people. But yeah, so that filled my social cup or dimension a lot. And then I think that also um I really love school. Like I'm definitely kind of an academic person. So I think my intellectual dimension was really fulfilled just by being in the university environment. My emotional dimension, I don't know that I was putting probably as much emphasis as I should have on mental health, but that had kind of I had such a strong support network of friends. I think
Yeah.
that fed into it a little bit.
I think it's interesting that they can kind of there's some synergies there, right? When you put energy into one thing, just by happenstance, some others can fall into place.
It's so true. And I think it kind of is a lot like your story, Drew, of how your kind of peak of feeling good about yourself and like fulfilling these dimensions, or at least some of them, like feeling good about how,
Yeah.
how you were filling them happened in college. And to be honest, I think a big part of that is the college lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like you don't have a job. Well, I had a job like at Baskin Robbins.
Right.
Um,
You don't have a full-time job.
yeah. I scooped ice cream like twice a week for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then I spent that money on party. um, but I think that once I graduated college, it was like everything was thrown into chaos. All of those routines that I had established, gone. The friends that, I lived a 2-minute walk from spread out across the country. It was a completely different picture.
Where were you right before this project? What did your state of your overall well-being look like?
When I graduated college, and that was 5 years ago, a little more than 5 years ago. So I've been out in the world for 5 years. Um, in that time, I think I have gone through kind of up and down phases of wellness. I've, stopped and restarted therapy. I have started taking medication for my anxiety. I take Lexapro. I don't sponsor us, Lexapro. um, but in many ways, I haven't felt since college really that I'm doing a good job filling up all of those cups.
Mhm.
Right before this project, I had a kind of major like health issues going on. I have a chronic kidney condition, which basically just in short means that I get kidney stones more than the average person. It's really painful. If you've never had a kidney stone, like I really hope that you don't get one. It's
Yes.
And that kind of came to a head over the last couple of months. I had to have a surgery, a follow-up surgery, was in the emergency room a bunch of times, just really like dealing with a lot of chronic pain and fatigue and these issues related to my kidney condition. And that in some ways was like a wake-up call for me, not because, I felt like I put myself in this position to have this kidney problem, but because as I was sitting on the couch for days on end watching like seasons upon seasons of How I Met Your Mother, um, I was wishing I could be outside or running or doing normal things and feeling good. And it really just like reminded me how lucky I am to be able to try to even fill these 8 dimensions or cups.
It was interesting to see you so quickly on the other end of your recovery become so motivated and active.
And I think that really speaks to why, for me, this was the right time
Mhm.
to tackle the 8 dimensions and to say, I'm going to invest really intentionally in each of these different areas.
But not just your physical health. I think the default reaction would have been, I'm going to focus on my diet now. And that was going to be the main thing. It's interesting to me that you were self-aware enough to realize it's not just that.
Well, I think that even before I had, my most recent like kidney stone episode, it had been years, right, since I had felt like my best self.
Mhm.
And I think that even leading up to that, like I knew it was time to make a change.
Yeah.
And then, that event happened and kind of spurred that
It
change.
was a catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Drew? Like, why now? Why was this the right time for you to tackle the 8 dimensions?
I felt like this was the right time to do something because in many ways I was aware that I wanted to make a change, but I have struggled in the past to summon the motivation to actually act and make a difference. In many ways, I think this comes down to inertia, right? Like taking the first step and breaking it down into smaller pieces is so critical to start making a change.
It's so true. This is actually something, Drew, that you'll talk about in the context of work, like having, a big rock, like a big goal, and then some smaller rocks or smaller steps to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've had conversations with my therapist about this who when he's dealing with people who have like severe mental disorders or anxiety or things like that, it's like if you're not able to like clean yourself every day or take care of your personal hygiene,
Right.
the ask is not how do I clean myself every day? It's how do I get out of bed and put my feet on the ground? Then how do I stand up? How do I walk to the sink? It's like breaking it down into these micro decisions and actions. That is so much easier to bite off.
Yeah.
And frankly, when we were talking about this project, it's like 8 dimensions of wellness, 52 weeks. That is a huge undertaking.
Right.
When you look at it from the macro perspective, like, what are we doing?
Right. It feels very ambitious.
But at the same time, I think it's encouraging that we've been able to break down each of those dimensions and then say, this week, what's one thing that I can do?
Yeah,
And then breaking it down even more, how do I need to engineer my day to make time for this one thing?
100%.
So, specifically, I want to ask you why the 8 dimensions?
I know how much time I have already dedicated to that physical dimension, right? So I have kind of my anecdotal experience as proof that investing in just one area is not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that, has arisen in other ways too. Like I've seen the impact on my life when one or more of my other dimensions or cups is not
Hmm.
filled.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when we moved here, I, was a little bit farther from my friends than I had been before. So that was an adjustment. And I felt like my social cup wasn't really getting full enough. And it took time to find ways, to connect with those people and to schedule phone calls and
Hmm.
schedule Zooms and
Yeah.
schedule meetups, all this stuff that I hadn't really had to think about as much before. So I think that, long story short, I think that the 8 dimensions resonates with me and hopefully will work for me
Yeah.
because it balances all of these things in unison, or at least as close to balanced as you.
Yeah.
What about you? Why does the 8 dimensions speak to you?
I just really like the intentionality
Mhm.
behind it. It forces you to recognize them well, and in the context of our project specifically, it forces you to recognize them on a weekly or daily basis,
Yeah.
which I think I appreciate the fact that this feels like a holistic view of your life. I mean, I think it's interesting we talk about the term wellness, but
Mm.
it's not just like it's in the context of your overall life, right?
Right.
The experiences that you have are often shaped by the choices that you make and the behaviors that you have. So, like, yes, it's a great benefit that you're pursuing wellness, but you might have a more exciting and fulfilling life by going through these stages.
I think that that is so true. And I think that it really touches on like the connotation that we have around the word wellness. I think so many people think wellness and think mainly physical health,
Mhm.
maybe a splash of mental health,
Yeah.
right?
And those are great.
Absolutely. Like those are great things. But I think my perspective and our perspective maybe is just that for us, it wasn't enough. Like we wanted a more comprehensive
Yeah.
picture of wellness and picture of like fulfillment and
Mhm.
happiness. And I think all of these 8 things are tied together around fulfillment and happiness as well as just, wellness, which is a super vague term.
Yeah. What feels different about this time compared to some of the others where you've attempted or put energy into pursuing the best version of yourself?
Intentionality is really the core of it. I don't think I've ever put this much intentionality into a broader set of categories. I've been intentional about physical wellness. I've definitely been intentional about, eating. I've been intentional. I mean, I don't know how intentional it is when you schedule a therapy and then show up every 2 weeks, but
I do think, well, I'll interject for a second. I think scheduling appointments
yeah,
is an executive task that is so difficult to do.
it's one of those adulting things
Yes.
that I just hate.
Yeah. Right. And it's been like more than a decade that I've been scheduling them, and I still loathe that task. I want to give you props that, like, even if it's a recurring scheduled appointment for your therapy sessions,
Right.
that still took time
Well,
to go in and do. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. But no, I think, as to why the 8 dimensions resonates with me or like
what feels
what
different?
feels different this time, I think that it is that. It's the intentionality.
Yeah.
What about you? What makes you think that this could be really rewarding?
I think there's a level of uncertainty to it. I want to acknowledge that. Like,
Yeah.
and starting this project, it was something that I was a little bit afraid of. Like, what if this one isn't different? I think what feels different about it for me this time is that I'm going into it with a sense of curiosity rather than with a desired outcome.
I like that.
One
I
of
love that.
one aspect of my life that has been very frustrating is I have been looking for this greater sense of purpose, and I spoke about this a little bit on our last episode, but without having an answer to that question, I feel like I've had so much energy that I wanted to devote to something greater in my life,
Mm.
but I haven't known what to act on,
Yeah.
right? I keep looking for this one thing that I'm like, if I could just figure that out, I could really go forward because I'm so motivated. I want to get better. And what I'm curious about is like, I don't need to answer that question right now, right? If I intentionally don't try to answer that question and just focus on filling up these different dimensions of wellness, what can just happen as a byproduct of that?
I think that is a really inspiring way to think about it actually, and I hadn't really thought about that before right now.
Mhm.
Just that you might even like stumble upon something so fulfilling and rewarding throughout this process.
Yeah,
Now, I'm really excited to see what that is for you, Drew.
I am too. I mean, we'll see. We could be 52 weeks from now, and I could be like, you know what? Didn't really do much.
I seriously doubt that. I genuinely believe that even if, we don't have some like major revelation in
Mhm.
the next 52 weeks or 50 weeks next, I
Yeah,
guess, that this is going to be better for us on the whole. Like I think that we are going to feel even just the fact of doing it and
yes.
continuing to do it for 52.
When we look back on a year of doing this, or after a year of having done this, my hope is that we look at this year as a great year. I also want to just,
Hell yeah.
yes, hell yeah. I want to say one thing that I like specifically wanted to mention going into this episode, which is I love the fact that this is not a New Year's resolution.
Oh my God. I honestly will die on the hill of I hate New Year's resolutions.
And yet we still kind of do them
Like,
every year.
well, we said that.
Yes.
But okay, like for context, we set some personal and joint New Year's resolutions last year. And we kind of were like, we're going to check in on these every quarter.
And we even broke them down into smaller like steps.
We really like put a lot of time and effort into setting those goals. We checked in Q1. We were like, oh, we're making progress.
Hmm.
I don't think we've checked in since.
No. And granted, life has thrown us some
Yes.
curveballs, but I think it just goes to show that like like you have to be at a point in your life where you're ready to take the step.
Mhm.
There is an artificial starting line this
Yeah.
New Year's.
It's January 1st.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? We started on October 20, I think.
Yeah.
And I, I wasn't going to wait 2 more months for no good reason. Like,
Yeah.
we were ready.
We were ready. And in some ways, it kind of forced our hand to get going. Like,
Yes.
we felt like personally we were ready. Frankly, I was not ready to like get the podcast up and running. We didn't know what we were doing when we started this. We still don't know really what we're doing. We're figuring it out.
Just life.
Yeah, we're figuring it out as we go. But like, it felt like there's this spark of inspiration.
Mhm.
It would have been looking back on 2 weeks ago and the whole 2 weeks that we've been doing this.
14 days, a fortnight?
I think, I
I
think,
actually don't know how long a fortnight is.
ask Taylor Swift. Um, I think that it would have been unfortunate if we had not seized on that
Mm.
single like little nugget of an idea and just taken it, right? I think it's rare in life when you have something that feels so like crystallized
Yeah.
and ready to pursue. If we had not done that, I think it would have been a missed opportunity,
I think you just have to jump at the chance when things like that come up. I really do.
which transitions then perfectly into our next question, which is what do you hope to get out of this experience?
I think that is a huge question. And honestly, I don't think that I have like one particular thing that I want to get out of it. I hope that, 50 weeks from now, I can be proud of myself for everything that I've put into this.
Mhm.
Like I hope that I can say I committed to this and I stuck with it and I prioritized myself. And I think that's kind of what it boils down to for
I love
me.
that.
What about you? What do you hope to get out of this?
That's such a hard question, right?
It is a hard question and we wrote these questions. So
We did. But
we set ourselves up for this.
I think it's challenging because, again, I'm trying to go into it without expectations. And that is something that has plagued other projects that I have tried to pursue. I have always been so focused on the end goal and what the fully realized state could look like.
Right.
I hope to get out of it an appreciation of wellness for wellness's sake. And we talked about this with the concept of creativity last week,
Yeah.
but it is okay to just pursue something to make yourself better. And that's the only goal.
I think that leads us really nicely into talking about what we did this week as we committed to this project.
What did we do this week?
Well, we're going to run through each of the 8 dimensions and share what we both did. If you're watching, which you can watch this on YouTube or on Spotify, it's also a video podcast. Plug yours.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Don't forget to rate. But you will see us both opening our journals because we've both been keeping track of what we're doing in our journals.
We have.
So let's start with physical. Drew, what did you do in the physical dimension?
All right. So we completed week 2 of our Couch to 5K.
We really did. We did 4 runs this week.
We did. I'm very proud of us. The other thing, and this is so relevant to our conversation earlier, I scheduled a dermatologist appointment that I have been procrastinating for 3 months.
Amazing.
I have thought about it at least 2 or 3 times a week since I missed my original one. And I put in the time and was just like, I'm doing this week.
And you called. Like, you didn't even schedule it online.
And so I called, they didn't answer. I left a message, they called me back. I missed it. And then I had to call.
Ugh, so brutal.
Yes.
I hate calling people on the phone.
And transparently, like this was one win. I had a goal that I was going to schedule some other appointments that I know I need to do. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm trying to just take the win
Yeah.
and be like, that's one thing I can do.
Yeah. I checked the box on that one. That's awesome. Proud of
Thank you.
you. And happy for your skin.
Yes. What about you for physical?
So likewise, we finished week 2 of Couch to 5K.
Yep.
I also bought a Fitbit, which I'm like a huge Fitbit purist. I recognize that it's 2025 and I could buy, a smarter smartwatch.
Mm-hmm.
I love my Fitbit. I've had one before. My other one recently crapped out after a long and illustrious life. But
Rest in peace.
literally. But I like don't want all of the extra functionality of some of those watches. I really like how analog, I mean, it's not analog, it's digital, but it's analog in the realm of smartwatches. So I invested in that, getting to use it to track our runs, track my sleep, all kinds of good stuff.
I want to pause there for 1 second because I think this just goes to show that everyone's relationship with physical wellness is different. I have tried tracking the analytics around my runs and my heart rate and all that stuff. It is just not for me.
Which is so valid. I don't think it's a need. I think it's like a
But
nice.
it's motivating for you.
It is. Yeah, I like to have it. I like to know my steps and stuff, but I definitely think that it can get really easy to get competitive with yourself in a negative way.
Yes, or others or anyone. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what about emotional? What did you do this week?
Well, for my emotional wellness dimension, and I'm going to be like intentionally vague here, so apologies in advance, but I finished a self-help book that I've been reading. I think there's kind of, or at least I have this taboo or whatever prejudice against self-help books. I think like I always would be like, oh, I'm embarrassed. Like I don't want to need help.
I share that feeling as well. Why does it feel different for a different type of medium, like a podcast?
That is a great question. I mean, in a way, like no one knows what podcast you're listening to.
Right.
But if you're reading your self-help book on the train, like that cover is out there for people to see.
That person has something wrong with them. Everyone look at them. That's
But that's not true.
right.
That's not true. And I think that like growing up and realizing, I do want to work on myself and work on my relationships with others and work on my mental wellness. Like those books can be really important tools.
Yeah.
So I finished one of those books that I've kind of been working on, and I'm not going to, if you're wondering why I'm being vague, I'm not going to name the title because I do think it's a little bit direct and I'm not trying to at anyone in my life.
Yeah.
But what I will say is this, the book kind of dives into communicating with people in times of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And, those people can be anyone. It could be your parents, it could be your friends, coworkers, in-laws, siblings, like literally anyone,
Yep.
your partner. And it talks a lot about how to express yourself, but then let it go. Like you can't control what someone else how someone else is going to receive what you say, what they're thinking. You can only control how you approach a situation.
Yeah.
So I wrote this down so I didn't have to hold up the cover of the book, a passage that really resonated with me. And I wanted to share with you, Drew, but also everyone.
Please do.
So this is from a section of the book called Expressing Yourself, Then Letting Go. And it's kind of suggesting what you should do in a time of conflict when you feel like you need to be heard.
Yes.
Explicitly say what you feel or want and enjoy that act of self-expression, but release any need for the other person to hear you or change. You can't force others to empathize or understand. The point is to feel good about yourself for engaging in clear, intimate communication. Others may or may not respond how you want them to, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you expressed your feelings in a calm, clear way.
What does that mean for you? How does that make you feel?
I think that for so long, I've felt like if I'm in a conflict with another person or have a disagreement, the only thing that can make me feel better is getting like a meaningful apology or, that person changing their behavior or saying, you know what, you were right. But I think that as I get older, I realize that those are sometimes not reasonable expectations.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are not able to give you those things, even if, they should.
And that is frustrating.
So frustrating. So I think that this is something I, talk a lot about in therapy as well. Just this idea that the only person you can control is yourself.
Yeah.
So when you kind of can change your expectations for other people and say, I'm going to be proud of myself for approaching this situation in a clear, open, communicative way, like you don't need that other person to affirm you,
Yeah.
right? Like you can know that you shared your opinion, right?
Yeah.
And you shared your thoughts, and that's ultimately what's important.
Yeah, I really think that's super well said. So kudos. I also think it's important to note that you can be focused on your own action and at the same time have space to be frustrated or upset or have an emotional reaction to another person.
That is so true. That's so true. What about you? What did you do for the emotional category?
So I have tried meditating at many different stages of my life. Oddly enough, this again speaks to my personality, but I became really competitive with myself about meditating at one point.
Classic.
I'm not going to name the app because there's no shade for the specific app, but I downloaded a meditation app that tracked your progress daily. And I was like, I'm going to meditate every day. And this is going to be how I'm going to transform my mental wellness.
Yeah.
And I became obsessive about it to the point where I would get home on a Saturday night at like 1 or 2 in the morning.
Mm.
And then before I go to bed, I'd be like, all right, well, now I need to meditate for 15 minutes. I should have just gone to sleep.
Right.
Right.
Probably better for your health to just
Yes,
hit the headache.
exactly. So, but it became a point of stress for me. So, I stopped for a really long time and occasionally have, sprinkled in an experiment with it here or there. But I was like, one time, I'm just going to do 10 minutes and I'm going to make that intentional time for myself. So I meditated.
I love that you're approaching that in the sense of changing your relationship with a tactic that you have already tried.
Yeah, because I do think that there's research that shows that it's great for mindfulness. I think it's calming. It helps with focus. The benefits are there objectively, but your relationship with it is going to look different from person to person.
Totally. What about the social dimension?
Um, it is at the week that we're recording this. It's Halloween.
Yeah. I
So
haven't said that phrase since college.
yes, so it is Halloween. And Quinn, you and I went to an awesome Halloween party with some of our close friends.
We did. It was fantastic.
It was fantastic. We went as M&Ms. We'll post the photo somewhere or show our costumes. But it's interesting when you go to a social event as an introvert and you leave being like, that actually filled up my social dimension or my social cup rather than depleting it.
It's so true. I think that, again, as we get older, we grow more mature. I think you also get better at like pinpointing which of your friends are people that are renewing and recharging to be around versus people that like exhaust you. Right. And I feel like I just think inherently in some ways your friend group kind of narrows down as you get older and you kind of lock in on those people that like really are great for you.
Yeah.
That you make a great, friendship with.
I feel like we've said the word intentional like
Yes.
17 times in this podcast so far, but being intentional with how you're spending your time and who you're spending it with is super important.
I completely agree.
So Quinn, what about your social dimension this week?
I also attended that Halloween party with Drew, which was fantastic. And I tried to do a couple of other social things as well. One of those things is that I mentor a child who used to be my student. At the very beginning of my career, I taught fifth grade.
Yes.
And one of my students from those early years, I've remained in touch with in kind of a mentorship role. So I had taken her out for mentoring earlier this week. And that was really exciting. Then the other thing that I did for social, in addition to the party, was that I wrote letters like in the mail with the stamp on them letters to two of my sisters. Yeah. I used to be better about I love writing letters. You don't even get me started on this, but I find the post office system like fascinating and magical. Like, I don't know. I don't even understand how it works, but I think it's so cool. And so I sent 2 letters this week, just kind of like opening that chain of communication of like, hey, send me mail back. Like, this could be a fun way to keep up with each other. So that was really fun.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So what about your intellectual dimension this week?
For my intellectual dimension, I finished another book. And
Surprise, surprise.
I know, surprising nobody. I questioned a little bit if that was intentional enough,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel like reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and it transports you somewhere, it's meaningful. Like, I do think that fills my intellectual cup.
Yes.
So the book that I read is called People We Meet on Vacation. It's by Emily Henry. I'm going to hold it up for those of you watching in video. And she is one of my favorite authors. I just think she's fantastic. Like, I aspire to be her. I read this book already. read it again, still loved it. And I felt like that was really doing something like for my brain this week.
Yeah, I love
What
that.
about you, Drew?
All right. So I have been working on listening to and reading this book for several weeks at this point, and I finally finished it. It is called The Anxious Generation. Um, if you have kids or are thinking about having kids, read this. We do not have kids,
No, we don't.
but the whole topic of this is about the effects that social media and internet access, high speed internet access, has had on a generation growing up with that level of access.
Yeah.
I am a member of a generation that had internet access, but toward the end of my childhood, and my access greatly expanded.
Mhm.
But immediate access to social media platforms like Instagram, for
Right.
example, didn't really happen until I was in college.
Mhm.
So, in many ways, I feel lucky that I was able to have the unplugged childhood that many people are nostalgic about.
Mhm.
It is a very frightening illustration of the effects that these platforms can have on developing minds. And the thing that I really appreciated about it is that the author, one, is incredibly well researched, but two, I think there's often a tendency in these types of books to discuss an issue at length and not present solutions. The author really does a great job of exploring what it looks like to have collective action in these types of complex issues, and also how do you translate that into your day to day if you are a parent.
I totally agree with that. I think you read so many theoretical books that don't offer you a real solution. I'm going to read this book next, so I'm really excited.
Yes.
What about the creative dimension for you, Drew?
All right. I am very excited about this.
Oh my gosh, wait. I actually forgot what Drew did until right now. And let me just tell you guys, it's so good.
All right. So if you don't know me or haven't met me, fun fact is that I've been a musician my entire life. I studied music in college. I played the saxophone, and it's something that had been a huge aspect of my life. And after I graduated, I really didn't pursue it any further. And in many ways, it felt like that muscle atrophied a bit.
Mm.
Um, so one thing I wanted to try this week is just a challenge for myself, which was acknowledging that I've never written a song before. And I was like, what would happen if I gave myself the artificial deadline? I have until the end of the week to write a song.
Right.
It does not need to be the best song I've ever written. It doesn't need to be a Grammy award winning song. I just need to like put the time in and see what happens, because I was curious. I'm like, I feel like I can do this, but I've never actually done it before. So I sat down, and in 2 days, I wrote a lullaby for my niece, and I'm really proud of it. It's, again, I'm not going to sing it on this podcast, but I think that it was a really cool opportunity. It felt like I don't know, I was like ecstatic when I came up and sang it
Yeah.
for you, and then
Upstairs and he, had his guitar and he's like, okay, I think I got it. I want to show it to you. And it was so beautiful and meaningful. And just like, I felt so lucky to be the person that, got to hear that song for the first time.
yeah, this is not going to be streaming on Spotify, but
It's really sweet. It's a
no.
really sweet lullaby for our niece, Isabella.
Yeah, so this again was I was super excited with my creative dimension this week. What about you?
So proud of you.
Thank you very much. What about you?
My creative dimension was making our Halloween costumes.
You slayed this.
Thank you. They honestly were pretty low effort, but high impact, which I
Mhm.
think is the best kind of Halloween costume. Yeah, we'll have to post the picture somewhere.
Yeah.
But we were M&Ms. I was the green M&M, which is the sexy M&M, and Drew is the blue M&M.
I was not
Ah,
sexy.
No,
Just
you're always
normal.
sexy.
Let's see. Financial is our next dimension.
So for the financial dimension, I have continued reading the Financial Feminist book. And like I had said last week, I really want each of my dimensions to be like new and noteworthy. So I was kind of saying, continuing to read the book isn't necessarily checking that box.
Yeah.
So in order to take that to the next level and have it feel more intentional, I finished chapter 1 of the Financial Feminist book, and I'll hold that up again. It is an awesome book. It's by Tori Dunlap, and I have enjoyed every second of it so far. The first chapter is all about the kind of emotional side of money and reflecting on, like learned behaviors you've picked up from childhood, but also societal narratives of money that have shaped the way you think about it.
Yeah.
So, in addition to just reading it, each of these chapters has like homework at the end. The homework for chapter 1 was about 10 different like journal prompts, kind of questions to reflect on. So, I journaled about all of those. And I think it was really productive to not just read it and think about it. And I am an underliner, like I'm writing in this book and stuff, but to to really make that stick and synthesize it, I think doing the journaling prompts was so helpful for me.
I love how excited you are about this book.
No, I really am. And I encourage everyone to read it. I think that I do think it's written for women, the financial feminist, but I also think that it would be super applicable for men. Like, I don't see why not,
Yeah.
because I think everyone is impacted by societal narratives around money.
You can also be a feminist and be a man.
So true, Drew.
So
That's
I'm
great to
think
hear.
I'm thinking that I'm gonna read this book next.
You should. I've already marked it up a lot. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to it.
What did you do for your financial dimension?
All right. So this is a very small one, but it speaks to my habits. I did a bunch of returns from online orders that I had made, specifically around equipment for the studio. Um, I am just notorious for not doing this, wasting money because I let the return window expire.
Notorious.
Yes, to the point where I like don't let myself buy things online because I know that I'm not going to return them if it doesn't work.
And I love you so much, but this is like your fatal flaw.
It is. So, and not even that it was a crazy amount of money, but I yesterday was like, I'm gonna. We worked together on getting the labels, and we
Yeah.
went to the store and we dropped them off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That is one huge weight lifted on my shoulders.
I think that's awesome. And yeah, it's like the things that sound small for one person also can be like huge for another person. So I
Yeah,
don't think we need to say like, I don't think we need to undercut ourselves. That is a big thing. And I'm proud of you for doing
I celebrate the win.
Yeah, I support that. The next category is occupational. What did you do in that dimension?
Traditionally, I've thought about that as my 9 to 5, but another way to look at this is just applying professional skills in different ways in your life.
I love that interpretation.
So, with that dimension or that definition in mind, my dimension this week was working through the workflow of how do we put out this podcast,
Yeah,
right? We had to figure out like how do we set up, I mean, you helped a lot with this, but how do we set up the RSS feed? How do we get the YouTube channel going? How do
right,
we create the clips? How do I edit it? And
right.
many of these tasks I had professional experience with. Some of them I had never done before.
Great. You learned a lot of new skills this week.
I did. So it was a really interesting exercise to apply some past knowledge that I've had in the professional sphere to a new project that is, I would say, tangentially professional.
Totally. I love that for you.
How about your occupational this week?
For my occupational, mine also is a little bit outside the bounds of my, 9 to 5 job. I don't really have a 9 to 5 job. I work for myself. So I work at the hours that I see fit.
Yeah.
Um,
Love that for you.
I love it for myself too. But this week, I wanted to invest in my dream occupation, which is to be a novelist, to be a published author. I actually am a published author. A short story of mine was published in a literary magazine called Makeout Creek. Makeout Creek is now doing kind of like a retrospective, like greatest hits type book, like a book length publication rather than a magazine. And they're going to feature that piece again. So there was some stuff that I needed to do and had kind of been like procrastinating on proofing the piece, the page layout, my contributor bio, all this kind of stuff. So I went through and knocked that out. And I think that was an important step for my dream career.
I love it. I love it. Again, I think that speaks to it. It doesn't need to be something huge. It's just any step that we're moving in the right direction.
Exactly.
The last one is environmental. What did that look like this week?
In the environmental dimension, again, I think there's, your personal level, but also just improving the world around you, like as a whole. And I actually think I kind of did stuff in both of those this time.
It's exciting.
So yeah, so in the macro level, type of environmental, we had cleaned out our closet last week and bagged up a bunch of old clothes. This week, I brought those to a donation center because we're not wearing them, but I'm not just going to throw them out. Somebody else can use them. So I like felt good about that, and kind of that felt like contributing in a bigger way.
I love that.
Then around our house, we cleaned our garage, which is a much needed project.
I had made an attempt to do this earlier in the year and it was not fully successful. So
So you got like halfway there. Honestly, you did a lot of the heavy lifting, like literally and figuratively. But the garage was looking scary. So we did clean that up. And this is also really small, but I got a fall wreath on clearance because apparently after after Halloween, it is now Christmas. But I got a fall wreath on clearance and put it on our front door. And it's just making me feel very fall festive and brings like a little joy whenever I, pull into our driveway and I see that on our door. It just feels like the holiday season.
I love how happy that purchase made you.
I feel like I definitely am a culprit of buying random crap sometimes,
Mhm.
but that wreath really does make me happy.
It also wasn't an impulse purchase. You've been talking about this for over a week.
I have. What about you? What did you do in the environmental dimension?
So there were two. The first is in my like frenzy to get this studio stood up, I destroyed our basement.
Destroyed.
So I was like, we're going to keep doing this. I would like to make a nice, inviting environment for us to just easily walk down and be able to record. So that was the first thing that I did is clean up our basement.
And I'm so grateful for that. I'm reaping the benefits right now.
The second thing that I had done was clean out my car, which had just become a literal garbage can. So
That's in part my fault.
so I emptied out trash. I vacuumed. I did like leather conditioner on the seats. I washed it, all sorts of things, and it just felt very cleansing.
That's amazing. You have been talking about that for a while, so I'm glad you got the chance to do that.
Yeah. So overall, how did you feel about this week?
Honestly, I think it was pretty successful. I think that it felt like a little more effortful than the previous week. I think as like leading up to this project, I had brainstormed like so many great ideas. And then I did a lot of the like easier ideas in
Yeah.
week one. So in week two, I was a little bit more like, okay, I need to like get on the ball. For example, my financial journaling thing, I did that like yesterday afternoon.
Mhm.
So I definitely felt a little more like, okay, I need to really pick up the pace if I'm going to get through these things. But I felt really good after completing each one of them. And I think that's the goal.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like a chore.
absolutely.
What about you? What's your weekly recap?
My recap is that the beginning of this week felt very stressful
Hmm.
because we were figuring out how to get the podcast up. It took way more time than I was expecting.
I think that's going to get better each
Yes.
week as we kind of, like you had said before, get into a good workflow with it.
I agree with that. I'm hopeful and looking forward to reducing the time to market, as we would say in business. But um, especially the latter half of the week, I felt very good and felt like I was able to figure out a way to naturally weave this into our lives rather than making it be the sole focus.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of wrap things up for the day.
Yeah, I agree. We have stuff to do. But if you are watching or listening, please remember to subscribe to the channel wherever you're consuming this. Like, comment, engage, rate, all of the things. Any step that you can do, and also follow. Any step that you can do is going to help this reach more people. And yeah, we would be super grateful.
We can't wait to see you back here next week for week number 3. We'll see you then.